Well, this is video number 13 in the series, and this one will look at using X's and O's and the Stream Deck to program the switches. This is where we left it last time. We had the flight simulator up and running, and I had my Stream Deck, and we were programming it without X's and O's. And we got as far as using the Stream Deck software, and it was sending keyboard shortcuts, but it doesn't really work, because as soon as we lose focus, click on anything else, then a tendency for the switches to get out of sequence. And also, really, there aren't enough keyboard shortcuts for the hundreds of possible commands that we can send. So we want to look at how we use X's and O's to overcome these problems. Let's change the view here slightly. And let's move things around. I'm running in developer mode because I don't really want the hours that I'm spending putting these switches together to clock up as flying hours. But it does work as long as you've got the flight simulator actually working and running. So before we go much further, let's have a quick look in a little bit more depth at some of the aspects of the Stream Deck software. So this area here, these are the profiles. These are the collections of switches that you can put together. So you've got various different profiles you can create and link together. And we'll come back to those later. But this is the demo profile that we're working on. And to work a bit more with the profiles, if you click on the settings here, profiles, you can control the order that the profiles are displayed in by dragging and dropping them. So you can bring the ones you're working more towards the top, but it doesn't really matter functionally where they are. And if you either right click on here or this little drop down arrow here, you can see you can duplicate and rename profiles you're working with. So if you want to make an adjustment for a different plane, you can use that as a starting point and then rename it. You can export that, which is useful, so you can save it as a backup and import it back in again. So export, I've already done that. I've exported that to here. You just click save and export whichever profile you want. And if you want to, which means you could delete it quite happily. That's gone. And then I can bring it back by clicking here and importing it back in again. Double click and it's back in. So that's quite easy. And you can actually back the whole lot up. You've got a whole lot of things you've created. You can create a backup and you can restore from the backup. So that's quite important. The import is something you really are going to use more often, because if you go and get a profile from somewhere, like this one here is on Lorbe's site, if you download that, you'll have a profile, and the way to get it into your Stream Deck is to do either just import it. It'll come down as a zip, unzip it, and you can put it in. Also on this site here, on the Microsoft Flight Simulator, flightsim.to, you can search there for Lorbe's X, and there'll be various profiles that you can download. Again, there'll probably be a zip file. Unzip it and then import into your Stream Deck. So that's important, you know how to do that. The ones that I've brought down so far and think are useful on my downloads, I use that as a starting point to understand how this works. So this profile from the Steam Gauge version of the 172, and this is quite useful, bringing down an icon pack. It's got loads of different icons pre-made for you. Everything I'm using today I've made myself, so I'm not getting involved in any copyright or pinching other people's work, but that's useful to bring down. Okay, let's get back onto here again. So back onto the Stream Deck. Elgato do provide you with quite a few icons, but nothing really for Flight Simulator. But if you are doing other projects, there's a library here of loads of different icons that you can use, pre-made. And if you click here, you can actually go and get more icon packs free of charge. You can install these and use these, so you can hunt around and find something you like. But I do recommend downloading the icon pack from flightsim.to. That's really useful. And it's also where you can get some plugins. I've used 2 plugins here. I do music software, so I've got Cubase and some MIDI connections. And if I put the plugins in, these are the set of tools here on this side here. These are plugins. If you want to uninstall them, you uninstall them from here. But the Axes and O's plugin isn't available through the Elgato store. You need to get that from Lorbe's own website. You can't buy Axes and O's from here. It gives you a link for where to buy it from. You buy it commercially, but everything on this page then is free to you to download and use. So there's a profile worth downloading, and it will give you the starting point for making gauges and looking at how gauges are constructed. But this is what we want to download. It's the actual plugins, the tools that we're going to use for making our own buttons for Axes and O's. So let's get back into Stream Deck. So on the right hand side, these are some of the standard tools that come, and there's my Cubase one that I've downloaded. If I right click on here, it tells me what version I've got, and I've got the ability to uninstall it, but I wouldn't uninstall it here. I would use the store uninstall. But if you wanted to uninstall Lorbe's plugin, that's where you would go and uninstall that. So zip file comes down, and it's the usual thing. Paid version, there's the plugin, extract it, and it gives you the PDF instructions, and you literally I've got the software up and running. Double click on that. I've actually got the A&O Axes and O's running as well. Double click on that, and the plugin will come into the Stream Deck, but it may not appear immediately. This management bit here tells you what's visible and what's not visible, and I don't want Cubase to be visible anymore. That's excess to my needs, but I do want Lorbe's Axes and O's visible, so click done, and that's it. It gives us a whole set of new tools that we can use. Don't need that anymore. This didn't work, so we'll delete that, and we're going to start to create the buttons for the beacon. I want to be able to turn this beacon switch on and off using a button on my Stream Deck. So which one should we use? Well, I'm going to put these 5 on here. We know it's not a gauge that we're creating, so we won't bother with those, but if we just slip these onto here, and I'll label them up so we know what we've got. Now, one difference with these add-ons here, you do have to click the submit button when you've edited them. The standard ones here for the Stream Deck, you just make your changes and it instantly recognises the change. Don't get caught out by not pressing submit. It's really frustrating. Let's put the toggle on off. Event. and the on-off event in, and let's look at the differences between them. Okay, well, firstly let's deal with the button. What the button does, it actually emulates pressing a button on a joystick. So if you have run out of joystick buttons and there's something you wanted to allocate to your joystick, it's possible to do that. I've never tried it. I've got loads of buttons here, never needed to do it, so I'm going to eliminate that one straight away. Don't need it. Toggle, well, these look like toggle switches, so that looks like quite inviting, but it also looks like it's going to do on-off for us as well. So those two are quite important to understand. Let's have a look at the toggle. It allows us to write an event, and we can send a value. It also allows us to read a variable, and it asks us what do we see in this variable when it's on. Never used the long press, never needed to, so we'll come back to that later perhaps. And you want it to repeat over and over again, so that's a yes on that. This is the on-off. It allows you to write one event, one command with an on value, and write another event with an off value. So the difference between them is this one here you can send the same value to toggle on and off, and this one here you can send individual events if they're different for the on and the off. And again, it allows you to read back a variable as well, and that's useful for a couple of reasons. Firstly, it controls the graphic that you're going to display, whether it's on or off, and also it needs to know whether to send the on or the off, so it reads the state and sends the appropriate command. And again, there's a submit button at the end. The event button allows you to write and send a value, but it doesn't read any values back. It literally just sends. And the on-off is a sort of equivalent of this one here. Again, you can send an on and a different off, but it doesn't read the variable. So there's no way of getting information back. So I'm going to eliminate those two because it won't be able to change the graphic for me. So we're down to a choice of two. Is it on or off, or is it a toggle? Axes and O's can actually help us here. Let's bring that in. In the scripting area, we can watch the simulator events. So if we put that up here, and if I turn this beacon on and off, you can see what it does. So I've turned it on, and it sent a 1 in the for beacon lights set. Turn it off, and it sent a 0. So it looks like this is an on-off switch that I'm going to use, and it's sending two different values. It's sending either a 1 or a 0. Next question will be, what variable are we looking at? So again, back in the scripting area here, we can ask it to watch the simulator variables. Now it doesn't just watch, we actually have to tell it which variables to keep an eye on. So we're going to select it, and we're going to do a look here for beacons. We'll have a look through and see what we can find. Those aren't the right beacons. Don't think so. It's these two here that interest me. Let's try this one first. Is the light beacon on? So click on it once to highlight it. Sorry, double click and add that to my watch list, and I'm going to put the other variable in as well. So again, we'll apply the filter for the beacon, and I'm going to look at this one, the light beacon, and we'll add that. So I've got two variables running. So let's click on here, and I can see that this variable here is working, and that's detecting whether the switch is on and off. This one here is actually detecting whether the light's on or off. Is the bulb lit? And it's not, because we haven't got the battery switched on. If we turn the battery on, that also changes. So really I want to know if the switch has changed to control that graphic. I don't care whether the battery's on or off, I want that switch to move. So let's go into Stream Deck again, and I'll just push these out of the way for the moment. Okay, back in Stream Deck. Got interrupted there. I hope the edits worked, but be honest with you, there was an edit. So back onto here, the on-off switch for setting the beacon. So X's and O's. X's and O's in the scripting section, we would normally write scripts here, and we would normally insert our sim events and variables into here, but we can use those as a shortcut to put the values into here. So I want to insert the sim event, and we're looking for the beacon. And we've got a couple we can choose from: on, off, and on, a set, and a toggle, and they all look inviting. But the one we were working with here was the beacon light set, so we'll use that. And the way to put it in is to click once to highlight it, right click to select it, and then usual Control V, paste it in, and we'll send a 1 for on, and a 0 for off, and I want to view where we decided that variable there. So we can close that and insert the variable for the beacon, and it was this one here, the beacon. So one click to highlight it, right click to select it, paste it in, and tell it it's looking for a 1. I need to put the graphics in for that. So I've got a whole set of images that I've created, and I want to put the off version there, on version in the second one, retitle this as beacon, and submit. So let's see if that's working. One switch switches it on, switches it back off again. Is it in sync? If I turn it on here with the mouse, it's changed here. That's reflected in the software. You can see it changing here in the software as well. So that looks like it's working fine. But I also saw that there was a toggle version when I did my search in X's and O's. So let's try programming the toggle version. So the event that I want to write here, insert my sim event and go for beacon, apply the filter, and there's a toggle version. In here. So I'll try that. One click, right hand click to copy, paste it in, and I'm going to send a 0. I don't think it matters whether you send a 0 or a 1. So there's only one event to program in. Now there's one variable to program in, and that's the beacon one. So insert a sim variable, it's the beacon, apply the filter, and it's this beacon here. So one click, right click, you need to get rid of where it said number and tell it it's looking for a boolean, whether it's an on or off. One, submit, and again I'll put the artwork into there so to get the graphics up. I'm going to put the off in first, the on in second, submit that, and we'll have a bit of a tidy up here. And we'll test the button here. On, off, and I quite like the toggle version. So let's relabel that. I think I like the text at the top. Yeah, I think I like it there. Okay, we'll submit that. So I'm going to go with that toggle switch. Not quite sure why it hasn't changed there, but it should have done. That's an interesting bug. Not seen that one before. I'll come back on that. Oh, that's why. I've changed it on that graphic there, but not on this graphic here. That's the default one. If I change that one, it will change both. I'm not sure why it's not switching to the top. There it is. Okay. So that's toggle version. As long as you can find a toggle version in your search for a sim event, I think that's the way to go. It's one less step to program. Right, so should we have a look at landing lights? So we'll do the same as before. Let's clear that list. And let's manually click this one here for the landing lights. And we're looking clearly for landing lights. And we'll see if there's a toggle version for that. If I go back into my Stream Deck, I'm going to duplicate this one. So we'll take the toggle, copy it, and paste it in there. So we've got two versions of the beacon button working, but it looks like the event was landing lights set, but I'm hoping there's going to be a toggle landing lights. Let's have a look. So insert a sim event. Landing lights toggle. Yeah, we'll go with that then. So one click, right click, make sure we're on this one here. That's our landing lights. Replace that. And I want to check, how do we check the landing lights? So which variable are we going to observe? let's remove these. And I'm looking for landing, and it's very similar. Landing lights bool looks like the one I want. We'll just watch that variable, make sure it's working. Yep, it's going from 1 to 0, so that's what I want to insert into Stream Deck. So on the landing, want to replace that. Do have a lot of windows open when you're working on a single screen. Sim variable. And I want to watch for this one here, not whether it's on. That's the one that checks if the circuit's actually alive. It's this one here, it's just checking the switch condition. Right click on it and replace this by pasting it in. And we'll now submit that. And give it a quick test. So, landing light. Yep, on, off. So the toggle is working fine. Taxi. Well, let's observe it. Taxi light set. So it's working in the same sort of way as before, but we hope there's a taxi light toggle, and see if that works for this one here. So back in Stream Deck, copy, paste, relabel that as taxi to remind us that we're working on the taxi. Shall we be brave? Taxi light toggle. Light taxi? What do you think? You can only guess. Submit. And then test it, see if that's working. So we'll press it appears not. So we do need to go and have a look and see what variables are actually available to us. So, sim event for taxi. Toggle taxi lights. Taxi lights toggle. Don't you love consistency? So right hand click and replace that. And light taxi. Well, let's have a look at the variables for taxi. Light taxi. Yep, that looks okay. So that should work. Don't forget to submit your changes. And then let's check it out. Taxi on, taxi off. Next one, we'll have a look at the nav light. Clear the list. Nav lights set. I'm hoping there'll be a toggle nav lights. So copy, paste, rename that one for nav. let's go and look what variables are available to us for this one. So the events for nav. Toggle nav lights. So I could probably type that in here. And we'll just check the actual variable for nav. Light nav. Submit. And we'll test the nav light. Yep, working fine. Strobe. Now, I've got a sneaky feeling about this one. I seem to remember having problems with the strobe lights before. Let's just check that event out for strobe. Yes, it doesn't mention light at all. It just says strobes toggle. So right hand click to copy it. Drop that in there. And we need the variable now for the strobes. And that one is in the system. Consistent. But okay, we'll copy that and paste it in there. Submit it and test it. That's all working fine. We could do these ones down here while we're about it. Let's put the fuel pump and the heating. I'm not going to bother with the cabin power. I don't actually use it, so just do the essential. Let's do the fuel pump. You can't do any work when this window's open, so you need to close that before you can do any work on these other windows. So let's watch the fuel pump. Fuel pump 1 set. That looks like an on-off. We need to see if there's a toggle for the fuel pump. So we'll do the same as before. We'll have a look through the sim events. Is there a toggle? Toggle fuel pump. Toggle electrical fuel pump. I think I'll go with that. Right hand click. I must have cleared that now. Bring up the Stream Deck. And we need a button here. I'll drop it in there. And it's a toggle. Oh, in fact, let's copy one of these. Copy, paste, This will be my fuel. Toggle electrical fuel pump, and we'll look at the variable for the fuel pump. Let's try that one, the general engine fuel pump. Let's see if that's working for us. Has got an index on it. If it's got an index, you might often have to replace that with a 1. We'll see if that works. In fact, I might, before we commit, is watch that variable here. So let's remove that and select. And we can watch a couple of different variables and see which one looks best. This one says it's currently not used within the simulation, so we'll avoid that one. We will look at this one here. So if we replace that with a 1, and watch what happens with the fuel pump. Does it work only with the battery on? It does only work with the battery on, so we've got to be careful with that. Let's have a look, see if there's another variable. Could be just the switch that we need. Again, change that index to a 1 and see if that works. Yep, that one works. The general engine switch with a 1 works without the circuit being live, so that's great. We'll go with that. So we're in the fuel pump. General engine fuel pump switch. And we'll test that. Yep, we're alive and working. That's great. So that's gives you an idea of how you have to sleuth things out a little bit. We'll clear this list here, and let's look at the heater here, the Pitot heater. It's doing the set and unset, so I'm going to assume there's a toggle that we can use on that. So let's go hunting for this event. Yep, that looks promising, so we'll copy that in here and we'll look for the variable for that. Could be the switch, it could be the heater. Okay, we'll go with that first of all. And we'll test that out again. Batteries off, and that one does work. So I've programmed in all those switches now. In the next video I will come to look at the magneto switches, see how that works, and these controls here. Okay, so we'll see you in the next video.